25 seconds.
24, 23,
22 seconds.
21 seconds.
20 seconds, 19,
18. 17 seconds.
16,
15 seconds.
14,
13 seconds.
12.
11.
10 seconds, 9,
8. 7. 6. Copy.
5 seconds.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, and welcome everyone to Subspace Chatter, with a show where we boldly go and discuss Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And we'll definitely be discussing a lot about Episode 5, Spock Amok. And I am your host today, Bob Vossler. Just to clarify, because I know my title says Spaced Out Host. Well, I am a Spaced Out host, but I actually host Spaced Out. But just to clarify that. So it's applicable in both ways. And I'm a longtime Star Trek fan and have been running my own Starfleet chapter for over 30 years, which means I'm certifiable. So let's introduce the rest of our cast of characters here today as we discuss the latest installment of Strange New Worlds. Let's start with Vanessa.
Hello, my name is Vanessa. I host a YouTube channel called I Love Bad Star Trek.
Cool. And Dan?
Hi, I'm former longtime admin of Memory Alpha and chief editor of the Star Trek website, warfactortrack.com.
And from the Great White North of Canada, Brad?
Hi, I'm Brad, and I don't administer anything.
That's fine. And Glenn.
Hi, my name is Glenn. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, host of the Star Trek Las Vegas show. And I was born the same year as Star Trek, so I feel a special connection to the show.
All right, and Scott wearing a Superman shirt, looking really cool.
Crossover time.
Yep.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Scott. I'm host of the YouTube channel, over here, Opinions No One Cares About. Not entirely Trek-based. I do videos about other stuff, but been a long time Trekkie.
All right. So we have the return of T'Pring and Admiral April, but let's stick with T'Pring. Let's listen. Let's weigh in on your opinion of T'Pring so far, and her unexpected return, or maybe it was expected. We knew we were going to see her again, but this episode we certainly saw more of her character. So what do we all think?
Oh, she's gorgeous as an actress. The actress is gorgeous, and she carries herself very, very well as the character, right? To have such presence, and she's a bit of a domineering kind of person, right? So you see that there's an tension there between her and Spock because of it. So, but I like the character.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a little against her at first. Oh, sorry, Vanessa, go ahead.
I just thought that the relationship issue that they brought up was extremely relatable. Like trying to prioritize your relationship while you're both being pulled in different directions. And I thought the way that she brought it up was extremely Vulcan, but at the same time, like she wouldn't say, "Oh, I feel something." Like Spock said, "Oh, you're disappointed" at one point, and she says, "No, I'm being realistic." So she sort of steps away from owning feelings because Vulcans don't do that really. But at the same time, I thought that their relationship was just something that will draw more of the audience in because it's very relatable stuff.
That's fair. I'd say at the beginning, I really kind of felt like, I mentioned this before, it seemed like almost everything that she was saying was kind of talking down to Spock. And, the fact that it comes from a place of logic, or with her being Vulcan and not emotion, kind of makes it feel a little worse. And she didn't know it at the time, but this is at a point where he's just had that dream where he's obviously struggling with reconciling both the human and Vulcan side of himself. So it really helped to set the scene for the episode. But over the episode, I actually felt better about it. Obviously the main theme we're going to talk about, the whole plot of the episode, it really helped the two of them to understand each other. So I came out feeling a lot better about their relationship by the end, and a lot better about T'Pring. Seemed a little less, I don't know, if she was human, I'd say stuck up, but she's just a little less so Vulcan, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it took me a while to warm up to her, but I realized throughout the course of the show that they're really doing a great job of continuity with the way her character is now versus the way she's going to be in Amok Time, foreshadowing the events that are going to occur. So I thought they handled that very well in both her mannerisms and her dialogue.
I really like the continuity with like Spock talking about his youth, like harkening back to like yesteryear, basically, in the animated series. And thought it was quite interesting. Looked up about the actress and found out that she is like Indian roots, Indian backgrounds. That's quite interesting.
Well, did anybody notice the subtleties? So first, she's very aloof, right? And both the actor who plays Spock and her, they're not overplaying the expression of emotion, which would be contrary to the character, right? But they're doing little subtle things. For example, my wife and I were watching it last night, Friday night. And last night, and we were. She was talking to me about how that first scene where Spock comes late to the dinner, how he was being told, right, by T'Pring. He was getting his comeuppance, but it wasn't so much in how she spoke; it was how she delivered the lines, and her mannerisms, how she was holding herself, right? You could tell from the body language that is what communicated the emotion. And there was one moment where he says, anyway, she's standing away from him, looking out of the window or something, and he's beside her, and she turns her head, but she turns her head in this kind of like way that cues that she doesn't believe it. She's doubtful. She's got the head tilt, not a turn, but it's tilted, at an angle as she's looking up at him. And that had attitude all over it, right? And you didn't have to go too far beyond that to really communicate the meaning. So they're playing the subtleties of that body language, I think, really well to help communicate meaning, the subtext, if you will. Right. And that's a mark of a really good actor or a really good director who's cueing the actor to do it that way.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, it's just like, she didn't put it that way, but you could tell from the way she's delivering the lines and her body language that it would have been like the equivalent of a human woman saying, "No, it's fine." And you absolutely know it's not fine.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Which, as we married men know, once a wife says it's fine, it's anything but fine.
Well, I think it's not just a woman, right? It's any partner at all.
Yeah.
Right? Any partner has that attitude, that feeling that they've been dismissed or anything. They're going to express in a way that makes it clear that even though verbally they're saying it's fine, they're really saying it's not fine. You got some work to do.
Yep. But I agree too that the continuity that they are showing us new glimpses of T'Pring, but yet still staying within what she will later be presented as in Amok Time. But it was great to also find out what she does as a profession, which of course we'll delve into further on today. But we'll go into Spock's dream, which was mentioned, and of course the wonderful Amok Time music that was used as a to set the tone. And how effective do you think that was as a mood center, folks? I mean, I thought it was great homage to that episode and very appropriate. What are your thoughts?
I thought that like it was move for move exactly the same as Amok Time, which I thought was a really interesting and fascinating choice. And it set the tone for the fact that he's constantly being questioned about his mixed heritage and the validity of his Vulcanness. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a great way to sort of set the tone for him, his inner struggle.
I loved it as well, and I noticed as well, like Vanessa did, that it was like move for move, and I was like, they're using like what you see is the human Spock does the same moves as Kirk in Amok Time. I thought like like Spock clearly sees Kirk as so human. And yeah, I really liked the music as well, but I think before the fight scene, I was thinking it sounds even more discordant than it does in Amok Time slightly, I think.
Yeah, I found that the music it wasn't so much but I agree the fight sequence, that whole sequence was very reminiscent and very visually, right? An anchor point that says this is touching on that TOS kind of imagery. There's something about TOS. There's some elements that are going to be present in this episode. And it was the stylistic choices. It was the music choices. It was how they use music to play the beats, right? The little subtle score that they had when Pike came into their quarters. It was the music of the Amok Time, right? Battle. And there were just these little touches. The score really kind of cued a mood. Boom, right? It was playful when it needed to be a little bit playful. It was light when it needed to be light. It was a little bit more moody and a little more sensitive when it needed to be something a little heavier. It was, masterclass. Right?
Absolutely. I don't know about anybody else, but I definitely got goosebumps when I heard the Amok Time fight theme.
Yeah.
But yeah, it wasn't just that. It's Star Trek has always relied on music for cues to what was going on, but TOS did it in a way that's never been done since, and the people in Strange New Worlds managed to recapture that feeling throughout the entire episode. I thought they did a masterful job.
Yeah.
One thing.
I thought it was...
sorry, Nate. It just occurred to me though. Are we good with the whole the fight between Spock's human and Vulcan sides? I didn't realize looking at it. I guess it's been a while since I've seen Amok Time, but you're saying the human Spock basically did the exact same moves as Kirk. Are we good with that basically being just a fan service thing? Because in the timeline of Strange New Worlds, Spock hasn't met Kirk yet. So it does seem a little weird that he'd be doing the exact same moves.
Right. I took it to be just, a kind of tip of the hat homage thing, not literally, move by move. And this was a different situation. I thought it was interesting to see, human Spock and Vulcan Spock. That hadn't been done even in in any form. So even in a dream, I thought that was a cute idea. And him even checking his ears, was amusing.
I thought it was interesting the episode also ends quite with music at the forefront with them using source music. I wondered basically about the first scene, if there's any elements that you're less keen on. I was thinking if there's anything, it's probably I missed the backdrop that was so rad in the Amok Time.
Yeah, I think there are some. I think certain elements are refined to be a little more realistic than, let's say, the way that Vulcan was portrayed in the original series, right? All the backgrounds are kind of washed, and there are very little detail. There was just enough to hint at something different. But now they're really pushing kind of those enriching details, CGI, or whether it's practical effects. And I think that's because we've become more sophisticated. We, as an audience, want a little more than just the basic. So I think we forgive a lot of those little touches, even though it strikes me as a little different. Yeah, just like for most people.
I enjoyed that he even got like the same cut across the chest that Kirk did. I thought that was a nice touch too.
Yeah. I've thought in a couple of previous episodes that they've done some continuity errors and even downright canon violations, but in this episode, I thought it was very tastefully done and maintained Star Trek continuity very well.
And I liked also that, one of the things I said for one of our first podcasts was this idea of convergence, about worlds coming together, and that first imagery. And I think there was some convergence of old and new in this episode, right? There was canon, real anchoring to canon, and there were some things that enriched our understanding, like of Spock, as an example, understanding his inner thoughts, right? But the use of music from the original series and some of those elements, those little touches throughout, and then ending it with a more upbeat or a more modern song, right, seemed to me to be a convergence again of different eras. So it was a nod to the old and a welcoming element of the new, bringing those two things together, bookending it, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this episode was chock full of subplots. There were so many little mini stories going on all at once, and I think they balanced it out, very well. What was your favorite, and what do you think was the most successful in creating some deeper character depth? We got a takeaway on a number of characters this episode, of things that we learned. So let's delve into that. Who wants to jump in?
Well, I think one of my favorite scenes was when we were finding out more about Nurse Chapel and her opinions on relationships, or lack thereof.
Yeah.
That really just hit home and really broadened out her character in a way that was unexpected and pleasantly surprising.
Yeah, I would agree. I like Chapel very much this episode. I was kind of hoping, and maybe we'll still see it, that she will reveal her, her relationship with Roger Corby, and maybe there's a reason. Maybe Corby will come up in some of the reasons why she doesn't want to be too attached, but she wants, she's just such a fun character. And she could definitely be a very good friend too, and she's shown that in every episode, to Uhura, now Ortegas, Spock certainly. She seems a lot more warm than we got to see her, in the classic episode series.
Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite for me, right?
Yeah, it was hard.
Because they were, as you said, they were evenly balanced. It wasn't filler. It was care given to each of the characters' stories, and there was significance for every character and what they were going through. So I have to say that I enjoyed the Leon and number one sequence, right? I think that wasn't just a personal, although we did see some differences in their characters, which kind of enriched them, but there was also some workings on the ship, and there was something a little more significant about life aboard the Enterprise that I thought was really, really helpful, really meaningful. So I liked that one, but I didn't like, and maybe we'll get to it later, I didn't like how they portrayed the ensigns.
Oh,
Yeah,
but we
that
can talk about
bothered me
that in
too.
just a little bit.
That bothered me too, and their reactions as well. But yeah, we'll have to get into that.
I thought it was interesting that one of the ensigns is the first bowling we've seen since Voyager, and they haven't changed the makeup for that species whatsoever. Unlike so many of the other species. Like
That's true.
Andorians,
That's true.
Klingons and stuff.
I love that they have a Boolean on board, a Boolean woman. It appears. It's a guess. I don't know. But my favorite part, honestly, was the subplot wise was the game that we'll talk about a little bit more later with Una and Lan. I thought that was so fun, and that's really like. I don't like to harp on, other series or anything, but I just appreciate that tone. I love when characters kind of cut loose and have fun with each other. And especially with Una, who is a little, and she has the reputation she finds out of being a little terrifying and trying to work on that. So when they find Ensign sort of misbehaving, she takes a more gentle approach, whereas Lon is much less less so. And I just thought the sequence where they're doing sort of a scavenger hunt thing was so cool, and I enjoy how they play together. I do still wish that again, this just seems to be an ongoing theme of Una not collaborating with Pike. I'm not sure why they're always in separate plots or in separate situations, or Una needs to be saved. Like it's I understand that this episode was a lot less urgent, but yeah, I kind of missed that. Also, Ortega's she dropped a hint that she had been in Caliphate, which I thought that was really fun. I wonder what the story is there. I hope we get it more. She mentioned like, don't meddle in Vulcan's personal affairs because I got scars from the instrument that they use. So I wonder what happened there. Also, Chapel dropping the hint of romantically pursuing a woman. Just sort of casually dropping that. It's not like a coming out thing. It's just, this is my romantic history. And yeah, there was just lots of little things that I enjoyed so much. Everything was, I love this episode generally.
I just took it to mean maybe like Ortega's has experience with using Lurpus in the holodeck.
Oh, yeah.
Perhaps.
Well, Vanessa, I would agree with you that those subtle moments when they're introducing something about the character that may be today very relevant, right, and it's very, very contentious, or just has a lot of tension around it. Identity as an example, but they're introducing it in a way that doesn't define the character as that identity. Right, it's just a component of who they are, and that I think is a well-rounded character. Right? Yes, they may go through some issues or moments when that comes to the fore a bit more, and that's kind of what this relationship thing is for Chapel. But I liked that what we didn't do was beat home the point over and over and over again that Chapel has this identity or this aspect of herself, and that was the entire thing for the episode. It was deeper than that. It was richer than that.
Right. She's not a token character.
Yeah, exactly. Can we talk about the ensign stuff?
Yeah. I know our security chief can be very intimidating, but really to make an officer cry, I thought that was a little hokey. I did not think that worked as well. I do see Una being the more reasonable, come on, tell us why you did it, but I just thought that the crying overdid it.
But did you notice that they're both pulling apart there, and when they race each other to the door, They're like, who's going to be bad cop and who's going to be good cop.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
called bad cop.
Yeah, I get that, and that was cute, but I just didn't get the overreaction of the while amusing, and I also have an issue with when we could go into this later with Spock smacking the Vulcan. Very funny, but really would that have even at that point in time with him being a younger Spock, would that have been his real course of action, even though that Vulcan deserved it?
I felt that was in character with the young Spock who hasn't finished developing his logical approach.
I thought as well that they did a good job of covering their own backs, because I thought like fans could bring up there, like, why doesn't they use a Vulcan nerve pinch? Have they forgotten about the Vulcan nerve pinch or whatever? But no, because when they do the switchback of the Catras between Spock and T'Pring, there's characters, I can't remember who it is, but I know Chapel's there, I think M'Benga's Audrey, and they refer to nerve pinches at the time. At that time.
Yeah.
That's true, and Spock literally isn't himself at that time.
So there were a couple things in the episode that rang odd to me. The punch of Spock while in T'Pring's body of the Vulcan, who just insulted for the umpteenth time Nurse Chapel, his friend who's come to his defense. All that makes sense in the moment. Okay, I get that. And then he's him saying, maybe I responded a little too human. Maybe I thought that was okay. What bothered me was the casualness of Chapel striking Spock. The reach up and tapping. Now it made sense. We would say, oh, that's just hilarious. But really, is violence from one gender to another? Today we would say that's not okay if we just took it in isolation. But in the moment we laugh at it. And again, should we? Right? Should that be an acceptable choice? Anyway, so just something to toss out. But I thought the way they treated the ensigns were quite juvenile. They weren't ensigns, they were children. And I think that is weird.
That was weird.
For someone who's graduated Starfleet and Starfleet Academy and has made their way onto a spaceship, and they seem inept. They can't open a freaking hangar door, and there were just some things that were wrong. There was in service of the story they wanted to tell, but it just seemed
totally agree. Yeah.
May it not be possible that they are actually in Starfleet Academy while on the ship, a bit like it brings to mind for me like Wesley Crusher was an acting ensign.
Yeah, I thought they were a little on the younger side and maybe a little more green and a little less familiar with what they should do or how things work. They're still sort of figuring it out. Like the ensign that does the communications always seems just a little bit panicked when she's called upon to do things on the bridge. So I actually thought that the sort of naivete and the sort of like tension of like being having that much responsibility on a ship that large, I thought that her demeanor made a little bit of sense.
It was kind of a lower decks moment, but I think it would have worked better on lower decks than it did here.
But even on lower decks, the characters aren't portrayed as that young.
Yeah.
That innocent, that juvenile, that, So I just thought it was weird.
I agree. It didn't work for me. I know what they were going for. I know they were going for the laugh, but I just think it also smacked of inconsistency.
And Kyle, he's not that he's so strict or he's so demanding, right? They say, no, not him. He's so mean, as though they were some middle school age girls, talking about, to some guy someone likes across the hall. It's just weird.
I think that's probably
the least believable part.
I think that's probably one of my favorite lines of the entire episode. Because I was like, oh, that really gives us like a new side to see of Kyle that we haven't seen before. And I like
It contributes to the character development.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought that part with the ensigns kind of rang true, because we've got new people on here. We've got Cadet Uhura, we've got brand new ensigns, fresh out of the academy, and this is kind of like the first of the 5-year missions before Kirk and company take over, before it becomes more established. So I kind of forgave that part.
I would find it hard to buy that dialogue from the character Uhura, right? Even though they are contemporaries, I would see that really, really tough, right? Uhura is being portrayed as a competent, capable person, but these two ensigns were anything but that. They just did not emotionally, professionally. They seemed off to me. But anyway, there's my point. There's my one negative about the episode.
Yeah. Maybe we should circle back, guys, to looking back at the Spock to Pring relationship. Like, where is it going? Where do we think it's going to go next? Will we see them rendezvous in the future? And, they've definitely had more insight. They've gotten to spend more time with each other. They've truly gotten into each other's thoughts and everything. So this, and what did you think of the Turnabout Intruder kind of homage as well? Because this episode is just a cornucopia of different nods to past Trek.
I was actually quite afraid when I saw this is going to be a Freaky Friday type situation that they were going to go overboard on the humor, but I thought they handled it in a very, very subtle, mature way with the excuse me, with the dialogue, the interactions between the two, the way they acted as each other. That was brilliant acting and brilliant directing, and yeah, the subtlety of both the intense emotions and the humor was extremely well done. I very much appreciated the way they did it. That really harkens back to TOS style writing, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I don't actually like the body swap genre, but I loved this episode. And yeah, it's like how they realized they switched bodies and they're just handling it so stoically, because if it had been two humans, they'd have looked at each other, realized what happened, simultaneous scream, long drawn out. If they'd done it in this episode, that scream would have echoed through the ship, through the starbase. You probably get a wide shot from space. But no, they handled it perfectly, and it really did seem like you're saying. It seems like it's harkening back to TOS. It would have been like if the original series had followed Balance of Terror with the Trouble with Tribbles. It's just perfect. Loved it.
Any other thoughts on the?
Go ahead, Vanessa. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that it was really interesting to see Ethan Peck as Spock be to Pring. Just the subtle, just holding their hands kind of clutched in front with the sort of sash over, and his voice just elevated just a little bit in pitch, not a whole lot. So it didn't feel insulting. As a femme person, I'm, I was a little I got it a tiny little spoiler that it was going to be a body swap thing between a man and a woman, and I'm like, okay, this could be a little rough. this could go into Profit and Lace territory if they're not careful. So I was very relieved to just see. I have a lot of respect for Ethan Peck to portray that, and also to the other actress that was playing to Pring. I think they portrayed each other very well. They must have studied. I mean, T'Pring doesn't have as much to go off of material wise, but I think the actress who played T'Pring has clearly watched Spock and just did it amazingly.
Yeah, the gendered mannerisms that they adopted were subtle, and they were not caricatures of the gender. There were subtle mimics of the gestures used by the actors to portray their characters. So they must have looked at each other. They must have been, thinking about it. And what I found, aside from the gestures and those subtle little mannerisms, was how they played the moments in the dialogue, the beats, the pausing as they were realizing that what the track they were going down would have introduced, their inner, the katra of the opposite person, right? So they had to pause and then switch. I think those beats were not played for comic effect, and as a result, they were comic. Because anything a little bit longer, those pauses a little bit longer, waiting for the laugh, would have killed it, right? It was just subtle, and that's what I really appreciate about any acting, right? If you have a role to play, if you're playing it subtly, then it's going to be really successful. The minute you start doing more than is necessary, it kills it.
Well, I thought the music in this episode was really key to establishing the comedic tone. Like when you see La'an and Una with the shooting each other, and I thought the music is clearly played so dramatically and seriously. It was wow. I don't know why that decision has been made rather than to play it sort of maybe more comedic, maybe more slapstick sort of thing. And I thought it makes it a lot funnier, I think. Because I think if they had played it more comedy, then that could be seen as telegraphing too much how the viewers should feel when they're watching this. I just thought it worked a lot better than that.
And my favorite line, I think, for the whole episode is, "People are idiots. You are fun." I think that was hilarious, just the way she delivered it. And it was meaningful and just spoke true to who the character was, right?
All right. Let's talk a little bit about Pring's job and the Vulcan criminals and that whole aspect of the storyline, which for some seems to be a little confusing. So what was your takeaway on that, folks? As to what we were originally led to believe was happening in her role there and her visit, and as opposed to what actually happened, because it seemed, at least to me, it was a little confusing there, though interesting nonetheless.
To me, I believe it was sort of a foreshadowing of what was going to happen with Cybok, the fact that we actually know now that there are Vulcan criminals and we want to bring them to justice.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
that was pretty much what I got out of it.
I liked how it harkened back to Enterprise, because the term Vitoshka Tour is actually used, which is the Vulcans from the Absolute Fusion that did a forced mind meld on DePaul, made her ill with that.
Right.
Back in Enterprise.
But I guess what I was confused by was the return to logic as the solution for their criminal behavior. Right? I mean, they reject logic, which allows them to be criminals. I guess for me that was my confusion. I didn't quite see all the connective tissue, if you will, from crime and returning to logic.
Right.
I thought it meant that it's illogical to engage in antisocial behavior, that it harms others, and it damages your own reputation, outside of breaking a law, because in most justice systems it's just, oh, you broke a law. But in Vulcan logic, it's well, you can't just say, oh, you broke a law. You have to explain, you have to sort of contextualize it and logically say, this isn't actually good for you, and it's not good for our society either. Maybe it also ties into this makes us look bad. This makes us look illogical. Yeah. So I would think that rehabilitation has to come from a logical place. That logic to a Vulcan is the ultimate yardstick by which to measure any action. So the more logical it is, the more attractive of an option it should be. But and also at this time, obviously the Romulans and the Vulcans are still not getting along, and they look at Romulans as irrational and illogical. So it's like anybody who's being illogical is moving over in that direction, and they want to course correct as quickly as they can.
Of course, we don't know about the connection between the Vulcans and the Romulans at this point in time, but as we saw in the storyline from our alien race of the week, that was in negotiations, which I thought was very interesting to see how they, at first copied each group, and then Pike's hunch, which I don't really know, that was a pretty big leap, I thought, on Pike's behalf. I mean, seeing that they were copied wasn't such that was a clear observation, but his big hunch, if I was Admiral April, I would be understandably nervous myself with Pike's, which fortunately panned out. But what did you folks think of that?
Yeah, it did seem a little bit like Pike realized that the aliens were using, as he put it, like radical empathy, but then his answer was almost to go with reverse psychology. The whole thing with the aliens, it reminded me, I flashed back on this old episode of Law & Order SVU for some reason. They had this murder suspect who could develop who kind of switched to a totally different personality depending on who was interrogating her, whether it was a cop or a psychiatrist. That just kind of put me in mind of these aliens whose name I'm never going to be able to remember or pronounce. I can't remember how it ended, so it's kind of a pointless comparison.
Yeah.
Sorry, useless aside there.
Well, I thought it was an interesting commentary about the way I read that interaction was that there was a bigger meaning, a bigger message, right? With this idea of radical empathy in society now, people are demanding empathy. Understand my point of view, right? Understand my challenges, everything that's gone on for me. In Canada, there's this push for reconciliation and a recognition of the Indigenous populations and the history that they've had, the tumultuous history that the society of Canada, the country of Canada, has had with them. In order for us to move forward together, we need to acknowledge the mistakes of the past and to feel something for that, right? To feel a little bit of what they're maybe feeling culturally about those issues. So I think when we're talking about this notion of this radical empathy and allies, it speaks to this putting yourself in somebody else's shoes so that together you can understand each other's perspectives. What were the names of the race of the aliens again?
Rodolphian?
In this episode?
Did they say Tellarites?
No.
They had started their negotiations with the Tellarites within the Federation. And they wanted to go through the gamut. They wanted to have humans and Earth, Vulcans,
In their interactions with people from the Federation, they empathetically responded in those interactions in the manner of the culture in which they found themselves having those negotiations. So Vulcan with Spock, right? Very logical, very casual and friendly with Pike, and very aggressive and domineering and, locking of the tusks, so to speak, with the Tellarites. And this was their way of showing, respect. So I think the episode is really about helping all of us understand that as we're going through and figuring out a way to move forward together in allyship, if you will, right, of different aspects of society, we need to have radical empathy and we need to appreciate each other's perspectives. I think that's a very overly simplistic solution to the problems we have today, because it implies that everyone's radically empathizing with each other equally rather than just demanding one-way empathy, right? So I think that was the main theme of the of the episode, and it's with Una and Leon, right? They had to radically empathize with the lesser officers on the crew on the ship, and why would they play this game, and why are they calling me this name, and you know, every other character had some aspect of empathy in their story in this episode.
I think La'an was trying very hard to actually not do that.
Right.
Una was very concerned about her reputation on the ship because she, as a senior officer, you know, as she was sharing, was that, you know, she's sort of apart from the rest of the crew, but she doesn't want that. And La'an is extremely happy about that and doesn't want anything to do with the politics of dancing, the politics of trying to figure out how to make friends with everybody. That's not hers. So I think they were trying to understand where each other was coming from as well. So I thought that was an interesting perspective from La'an.
Well, that brings us to Enterprise Bingo. And what did you like about that aspect, and what would your favorite task?
Ow, that really stings. Beautiful. Beautifully portrayed.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be honest, and maybe it might be a cop out, but I would just try to sit in the captain's chair. Like, I thought about it realistically. I thought, you know, if I was in Starfleet, like, knowing the kind of person I am, I don't think realistically I would rise any higher than lieutenant. So I'm not commanding a ship at any point unless there's been a major emergency or it's a really lower class ship. So I'm going to try to sit in the captain's chair, and then I'm going to pretend to be a captain. I'm going to tell some fake ensign to set a course in the heading and engage. Or blast off.
That's great.
I don't know if I'd want to be on the hull of the ship without a spacesuit. Now, at first, when I saw them walking out there, I was thinking, well, maybe this is yet one more nod, since they had the solar sail. Maybe this is they're going to mention that they're wearing life support belts, which we may remember from the animated series. You know, and that in itself being earlier than the animated series, and that the life support belts were probably a little wonky. So that if they worked great, that was fantastic. If there was a power glitch or something, not so great, because you'd end up, you know, in a bad situation. So I thought that's what was happening there. But I thought that was cute to have them on the, you know, signing that little part of the hull. And I forgot what it was called. And then seeing the sail fly over them. I thought that was a nice visual.
That same scene reminded me of like spacewalks in First Contact and in the Enterprise episode Minefield.
Yeah.
I love the gum thing in the medical bay. But I don't understand the physics of that, how they return flavor to the gum, but I thought that was so fun.
Yeah, I didn't understand that either. I thought maybe one of you guys would, because was it one flavor and then they went to something else and it was still the same? I didn't even understand that one.
I think
understanding it.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I thought it might have been either like, you know, they were somehow transporting the flavor from, like, I don't know, a different stick of gum, or she started chewing it and like they transported her and the gum and just kept it in the transport buffer, and then just put the flavor back.
Aren't the transporter and the replicators similar technologies? So it's just a matter of transferring the code for the gum, right? For the flavor into the transporter code for the transfer of one body within a body to, right? So I think that's similar technology. But I thought it was really funny that the list comprised rule breaking, but for the most trivial of things, but still required some ingenuity and technological know-how. They would have had to understand the transporter to make that work. They would have had to understand even though the ensigns were inept and they couldn't get out of the ship, they would have had to understand how to bypass security, and right, it would have taken some technological know-how to do all the things on that list, like fire a weapon in the hall, right? Or else all the klaxons would have gone off and said, illegal firing of weapons on the ship.
I just remembered one thing though. Are there different versions of Enterprise Bingo? Because I just flashed back to Children of the Comet when Ortegas was talking about, hazing her and telling her she had to show up for Pike's dinner in her dress uniform. She was saying there's like the first square of Enterprise Bingo. That was not on that list.
Well, we were seeing cuts though as well.
Yeah, I was under the impression we weren't seeing the entire list, absolutely. But going back to the ensigns in the airlock, I was under the impression it wasn't that they were inept, it was that they were trying to bypass security, and that's what was taking them so long.
Mm-hmm.
That was the impression I was
inept. What ensign doesn't know how to bypass security?
But do it in such a way that it doesn't appear on the logs, doesn't set off any alarms, that sort of thing.
Inept.
I think the aspect of Enterprise Bingo as it's portrayed in Spock Amok is very briefly you see like when the square is completed, it does the do 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 the fanfare. I thought that's a nice touch.
And it's Enterprise Bingo, right? So you don't have to do all the squares. It's however it's matched out. You have a list of things you can do, and it's corresponding to the bingo squares, right? So I imagine it's pick and choose.
Yeah, it does make sense that the list will be longer now I think about it. Because I think at the top it says like complete any 10 of these. And I counted it. I took a picture and counted it. That's 11. That's only 11 tasks. So it would make sense if it's a longer list and we just didn't see all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we've come to the point of the show where we decide to give the Pip rating for this episode. What would you say in the scale of, I guess, 5 pips being, the highest?
And only whole pips, right? Not half pips, or are we doing half pips too?
We could do half pip too.
Okay. All right.
Well, let's start her up.
I would go with the 5 because this is the most fun episode. It was the one that had the best continuity, the best combination of subtlety, humor, action. Basically, I would say TOS-ness. I've just invented a new word. So I give this one full marks across the board. And I also love all the callbacks. Another subtle callback was Pike's green shirt.
Yeah. I didn't mention that. Yeah.
And it was a crossover, wasn't it? It was a crossover with the side waist sash, right? The waist tie. Oh, that was lovely.
For
just in leather this time.
For like the longest time, I've been thinking so much of the series that I love is green, like regarding like cadet heroes and experience, the Gorn potentially, and that uniform variant. And as people online have pointed out, like it is slightly different from Kirk's. Kirk's had the Starfleet insignia just like on near his waist, whereas this one's go where it usually does on the Starfleet uniform. But I think I prefer this one actually.
Well, I will give it a 5 as well. I've already talked about some of the favorite lines, but pure comedic, right? From Pike was when T'Pring as T'Pring says, perhaps you've noticed our subtle mannerisms or our different mannerisms. And Pike goes, yeah, totally. I thought, mwah. So there were just so many of those moments where I would just go, blow the kiss. Just a masterclass of what this series or a Star Trek series can have in terms of good storytelling, great acting, and style. Right? I really, really love the way the series is unfolding so far.
I think I would give it a 4. I really like the world building in this, like including like it's Lieutenant Dever from the Skylark and stuff like that, and how it like builds on the very first episode of the show where you see the biospheres for the first time, and so they're actually like making use of it as a location, which I noticed the actors of Ortega said, it being Canada, of course, that it did rain when they were filming, but on location, our first location shoot was the show. But yeah, I'd give it 4. Like, I really enjoyed this episode, and just I think the only I was trying to think like what drawbacks there are. I think it's like I understand like the necessity, or what they probably see as the necessity of updating the designs and everything like that. So I can understand why they've slightly updated Vulcan, but I still really miss the red backdrop from a long time.
Did we get everybody?
I would personally give it a 5. I thought it was so fun. I loved how Spock as T'Pring sort of experienced some of the bias and the prejudice that she would experience, that she's experienced this whole time being married to Spock, and sort of having to process some of that guilt of his mixed heritage, and shame and guilt of having her experience that prejudice as well. I thought the funnier beats were great. I thought the deepening of their relationship was really great. I just thought emotionally it just hit exactly where it should.
I would also give it a 5. I thought it was, as everyone here has said, a very fun episode. I also think that possibly some of these ideas that could be seed planting, that we might see them explore different aspects of Vulcan culture. We might see maybe not this alien race again. I don't think we're going to see that, but I definitely think we're going to see more from the development that was established in this episode with some of our characters. So I definitely give it a full 5 pips.
I remembered another. Sorry, Bob. I just remembered another drawback that I'd say about this episode, that it doesn't have my favorite character in the show in it, because Hammer doesn't appear.
Yeah, he was noticeably absent. We didn't even get to talk about M'Benga and his fishing prowess, or lack thereof, or his
Scott?
hat. I actually liked his hat more than I liked his swing, his reel. But
Scott, did we get your pips?
Yeah, did we, Scott? I'm sorry.
You did not, but you're about to.
Okay.
I would absolutely give this episode 5 pips. Strange New Worlds is proving with every episode, it's getting better. It is more than capable of carrying on the Star Trek legacy. I don't think I realized until I saw this episode how long I've been waiting to laugh at a good, decent, silly Star Trek episode that isn't kind of intentionally trying to be like Lower Decks. Like I said, I don't really enjoy the whole body swapping genre, but I mean, this episode had me sold on it from the minute that it happened. And, I mentioned the thing about the scream earlier. They did get in a scream at the end, but it wasn't played for comedy. It fit the plot. It was perfect. And, I also enjoyed seeing the progression of Spock and T'Pring's relationship, and how the theme of understanding that went through every plot. And, there's supposed to be 10 episodes. This is where they're at the halfway point. Honestly, I cannot wait to see how they're going to continue to top this.
Definitely.
Agreed.
Definitely. Well, thanks to all of you panelists for joining us. And we hope our viewers have enjoyed our conversation. Let us know in the comment section and your thoughts about this episode. And please also remember to like and subscribe to this video. We'll see you next time. Trek you later.